Hello, everyone. We are going to be playing Morrowind in multiplayer today with the Tamriel Rebuilt team. This is kind of an interview slash gaming session where we're going to be going over Tamriel Rebuilt. Here with us are some members of the Tamriel Rebuilt team, as well as David C., who's going to be ghosting us. David is the lead developer on the Morrowind Multiplayer, and we'll get into him after we're done with all the Tamriel Rebuilt stuff. But currently, the Tamriel Rebuilt stuff comes first, and with that, we have one of the lead developers, Nomi, to talk to us about that. Nomi?
Yes, hello. I'm Gnomi from Tamriel Rebuilt, and I'm one of the lead developers of Tamriel Rebuilt. And Tamriel Rebuilt is a project for the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, which adds landmass. The Elder Scrolls Morrowind adds basically its game world is an island called Vattenfall, and that's part of the province called Morrowind, which the game is named after. Tamriel Rebuilt adds the rest of that province, which goes all the way around it. And originally it was going to add the other provinces as well that belong to Tamriel. It is now just focused on Morrowind. And we basically have a lot of landmass content already. About a third of Morrowind in landmass is playable. And we also have a lot of quest content, which before we didn't have as much reputation for having a lot of. And we'll be seeing a bit of that today, especially the landmass, of course. This is the area of the new Aanthirin release, which we released just very recently, actually. And there are 4 of us from Tamriel Rebuilt. There's me, Gnomi, and I'm the Wood Elf in green. And then there's this Imperial here, who is Atrionis, another lead developer, and he'll introduce himself a little bit.
Hello everybody, as Gnomi said, I'm Atrionis, lead developer of Tamriel Rebuilt. In general, I'm responsible for a lot of the backend stuff, the website, project organization, and the like. For our last release, I wrote a couple of books, did a few bug fixes, bug tests, and so on and so forth, and a couple of work on assets. And now I give over to Kavar, who's standing left to me.
Hello, I'm Kavar. I'm one of the lead developers at Tamriel Rebuilt. I focus mostly on quests and writing. During this release, I had to take a bit of a step back due to real life, but some of the stories of the quests that hopefully you'll get to see today, I had a hand in. And I'm going to then introduce you to Mort, who's standing next to me. He's the orc.
Hi, I'm Mort. I'm a quest dev. I did the Speaker of the Dead quest line in this release. I NPC'd a few of the towns. And yeah, hopefully we get to see some of the quests I made.
Hey, I'm just some random guy over here.
Yeah, that's David. We'll be talking to him later at the end of the stream. But just treat him like a ghost. He doesn't exist. So, Nomi, what do we have to see today?
Okay, so we're currently in, as I said, the release area for the Aanthirin release, and we're sort of in the top west corner, which belongs to House Hlalu.
Mhm.
You'll sort of have to bear with the place name pronunciations. That's always a bit difficult with fantasy names.
Yeah.
And we're currently in one of the Hlalu plantations, and we'll start out by basically walking through the Hlalu territory. And the idea is that this Aanthirin release is basically centered on a river that goes through it, south to north, rather.
Okay.
And the east half belongs to House Indoril, the west half to House Hlalu.
All right. Let me address a few things really quick that I think people would want to know. First of all, a big thing I hear about Tamriel Rebuilt in general is I'm going to try it when it's done, if it's ever done. That is one of the biggest sins I've ever heard, considering how much content is playable. What, 100 hours, something like that, like of gameplay.
Yeah, I believe that TR now has more quests than Oblivion and Skyrim not put together, but individually than those games had on release. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head.
Okay. So, if someone were to go the straight east or kind of southeast from Vardenfell, you know, just across the ocean, they'd get fully playable content, right?
Yeah, they would.
So that's important to understand. Even if they went straight south to, say, Old Ebonheart, the Old Ebonheart has tons of quests, doesn't it? There was a recent expansion for that, right?
Yeah, Old Ebonheart has a ridiculous amount of quests, hasn't it? You can really just play comfortably in Old Ebonheart for a while just by itself, that one city.
Khan, a regular on my streams, mentioned that the city of Old Ebonheart gave him 20 hours of content. He live streamed that, so people know that's actually true. So folks who constantly go, you know, well, I'll try it when it's done, that's a bit misguided. Try it now, and it probably has more content than you are able to do in a reasonable time frame. That's all I'm going to say on that. Let's go ahead and hippity hop on through. And just lead us onward.
Yeah, exactly. We'll want to be heading generally southwards. Lands that are to our west and a bit to the north will are currently only playable in TR Preview, which doesn't have quest content and so on. That's what you might want to wait on and might not want to load in your game. But those areas are planned for the next landmass release.
Okay.
Which probably won't come next year, but we'll just have to see how quickly we get done with that, because it'll be a lot larger in landmass.
Okay. So, as far as, like, the trees and stuff, these seem a little bit different from the ones in Vardenfell, I notice.
Yes, exactly. These are, in general, the Aanthirin is a region that's still quite friendly, still quite safe, and has lots of similarities to the Ascadian Isles region from the original game. But it is still starting to get a bit weirder. You can see the trees are a bit different, the ground's a bit different. A lot of those are lichens and mosses and so on, and a bit of the orange palette. And that'll only continue as you go south from there.
So, let's see here. I was going to say that thanks to Test 3MP, that's Morrowind Multiplayer, we have actual developers running around with us in this, which is really cool considering the last time we did one of these videos. We kind of just had me running around aimlessly talking to you guys. Was going to say that I'm sure you have things to show us specifically for the purpose of this stream. But in general, I would say that it's very impressive the amount of content that's here, and I get that you're focusing on the new stuff, but for someone who's just breaking into Tamriel Rebuilt for the first time, let me ask you a question before we get to any major landmarks that you want us to see. Where would you, like, what were some cities that, or towns that you'd recommend players get started questing in right away, other than Old Ebonheart, of course, which, again, 20 hours of content, Khan said. Any landmarks that people should check out?
Yeah, in general, as of the released areas, well, of the newly released area with Aanthirin, the other major locations are Almasthir, which is where we'll end up in, and Roetir, which is right next to it. That's a temple canton on the river, and then an Indoril stronghold to the east of it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, those are definitely worth checking out. And with the older released areas, the places where you generally want to go are, for example, Firewatch, which is another imperial town similar to Old Ebonheart. That's on the inner sea. And then Necrom is also a really interesting place to visit, which is on the eastern coast, on a peninsula, a big peninsula.
I'm a big fan of Akamora, kind of central eastern side. That has some really good quest lines in it.
Yeah, I noticed that the Akamora Necrom region seems like that whole expanse seems to have a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I think by that time we had figured out kind of how to mod this game and how to make it interesting. We started to get more people on board who could do new models, new and different scripts. Whereas, like in the old Telvanni regions, it was still pretty basic. We were still just figuring out the construction set and everything.
And if you prefer to go to the west, you can go to TR Preview and check out Tain, which was long time ago supposed to be the TR starting city. It will still be for low-level players, and even though it's in TR Preview, it already has a few low-level quests.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me.
It's going to be in the next release.
Okay. What is this particular town that we're approaching now?
Yeah, we're now coming up to two rather interesting areas. One is, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but if you look up to the west, up the hill, then you might see bits of a ruin up there.
Oh yes, I can see the Dwemer Towers kind of. I'm gonna.
Yeah, that isn't actually Dwemer. That is an old Indoril stronghold. And so that's also a very interesting place to visit, but it can be hard to get to.
Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of slide up here a little bit so I can see the edge of it. Yeah, that's old Velothi for sure. That looks really good.
Exactly. And so that's one location, and then the other location is down there, that sort of Lalu place that you saw.
Yeah?
That's the Oran plantation, and that is the largest plantation in this area and on the river. And it was also the first plantation that was built there, and it belongs to a figure called Atran Oran, who is a very powerful Dummer, sort of made a name for himself in Narcissus, and then basically got his stronghold. And he will be one of the major figures also in the sort of political storyline of the region.
Someone asked in chat if we could change the weather. Is that possible?
Yeah, I can try, but I don't actually know what the name of this region is, so I have to look it up.
This is the Aanthirin region, but the ID.
Gonna say if you go to the console and click on one of the doors, specifically go inside, then go to open up the command console and click on the door leading out. It will give you the information about where you're going. Kind of an easy trick to find out where you're gonna be.
No, because it says we're going to the Oran plantation, and that's not the name of the region.
Right.
And the weather is based on regions.
Okay, so in chat, somebody said the actual command there. If you have the chat open, that is.
Yeah, frankly, on my end, it's actually clear weather, so that's one of those things with the multiplayer. I was wondering, why do you want to change the weather from this? It's great.
Yeah, well, I get why, because people want to see what it looks like on clear day versus the rain.
I know, I looked at the stream and saw that it was all gloomy and rainy there.
Yeah.
For me, it's, bloody perfect.
I get it.
That's strange. It must be buggy at the moment.
I've had this happen. Remember, I've done like 6 campaigns in multiplayer already, so I can tell you that this is something that does occasionally happen in multiplayer, is the desynced weather conditions.
Well, I mean, if that's the worst bug that we encounter on this stream, then I'll be pretty happy, so.
Makes sense. But, yeah, I mean, considering the multiplayer is able to sync up, kills, skills, potions, all sorts of other things, I consider it a small problem. Now, who is this man here? He looks fancy.
He is very eye-catching, yeah. And that is basically just that that Orn is just a very powerful figure, and so of course he also has powerful people.
Yeah.
If you look real close on his kilt or his skirt, his skilt there, you can see the hollow.
Ah, okay. So yeah, he's a guard or a servant of House Halalu, and makes sense. He's wearing ebony. That's pretty beefy.
Yeah, not someone you'd want to poke too hard.
Certainly not at level 1.
Nope.
All right. So, what do we have to see next?
Okay, so we'll be continuing on to the Temple Canton stronghold I mentioned earlier. And the temple basically has a sort of interesting role in the region because the canton is pretty much the only place where you can cross the river until you get way down the south to the Lalo capital of Narcissus. And the temple basically, it sort of levies tolls and so on for ships coming through and for merchants who come over the bridge. But it also...
It's a miracle. The
Hey,
bridge...
clear weather. I wonder how that happened.
Amazing. It's a Christmas miracle.
But basically the temple is also has a sort of political role of trying to moderate the conflict between the Hlalu, who are trying to spread their territory to the east side of the river, and the Indoril, who are trying to hold on to it.
I see.
And so that's also going to be the major conflict of the region, and already there are a few quests and quest lines in the Aanthirin release that deal with the conflict, but there will be more content about that in the future as well.
I see. Is there any house dress presence at all in this update, or is that a little later on?
House dress don't really have a direct presence, but one of the towns that you might get to in the end is called Imra, and there you trade with or there the Indoril trade with the dress.
Okay.
And the dress don't directly figure into it yet, though, and that is also the thing that in general with the dress content, that's something that we want to move forward, but we for a long time just had such a problem getting the assets, and now a lot are being made, but it's a difficult thing because the dress region will really be totally new, both, you know, the buildings and so on of the dress themselves, but also the wilderness region. And it's all going to be new content, so very worth the wait, but there will be a long wait until it comes.
So what do we got here? This altar, right here.
Need to actually see where you are. There you are. Yeah, yeah. This you might have noticed that the road has a different different cobblestones to it, and is a bit wider here.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, this road will, in the end, as when the project's done, it will go all the way from the western border of Morrowind to Cyrodiil, all the way to the east coast at Necrom. And it is basically the route that the Prophet Veloth took when he led the Chimer into Morrowind.
Okay.
And so it's a really major pilgrimage route and also very important for trade and so on. And so you see things like these shrines, which are sound shrines, and they produce a hum which attracts wayward spirits, who then come over here to gather to the road and follow the grand procession to Necrom, where the Dunmer are buried, or rather where they're used now in this point in Morrowind's history to power the ghost fence.
Right. That makes sense. And now, you mentioned to Cyrodiil. Is there going to be a border connection for the Province Tamriel mod?
Yes, there is, and we have started interacting with those, or it's already been a while now, with the other province mods a lot more, and that includes stuff like the border planning. So this road will basically connect to the Blue Road of Cyrodiil, which will then also go past Cheydinhall and all the way to the Imperial City. And it's probably along the Blue Road that the player character of Morrowind would have come originally, with the first by carriage, now by boat, to East to Morrowind line.
I see. David, any chance you can set it to 8 a.m.?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll do that.
There we go. Huh. This is interesting. I noticed that these lily petals are here. Is there any significance to those as far as the religious goes?
Not really, though the Thur itself does have significance to Veleth, as it was sort of one of the challenges that faced Veleth and his followers was being able to cross the river, and so that's also, once you get to Almastir, there will also be a shrine there about the crossing of the river.
Okay. So where are we going next?
Okay, so now I'll basically just follow this pilgrimage route to the east, as the pilgrims would, until we get to Almastir, and that shouldn't take very long.
Does this connect to anything? This drainage here? I have to admit.
No, that doesn't. It does look nice, but as far as I know, it doesn't, unless somebody.
Yeah, my immediate reaction is I need to get on those stones and get in there and follow the pipe to figure out where it goes. You know, like
Check back
Yeah.
next release.
yeah, exactly. Secret dungeon time. Better yet, have a lock on it to where you have to get the key from somewhere, or use magic to open it, or something like that. Would be cool.
Yeah, at the moment, the only purpose of it is to trap players, like it just trapped Mort there. Not sure if you saw him swimming around, but
Yes,
through the power of the console, he managed to escape.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah, no climbing in this game. That's one thing I do miss about Elder Scrolls 2 is the climbing skill.
Yeah. Well, you never know with Open Morrowind. We can always dream of the features that it might end up adding.
It's true. It's true. I believe there was a guy named Texifornian who was working on a bank mod, and I'd be very interested in seeing that work in multiplayer.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the cases where the province mods cooperate, because there is actually also a bank in Old Ebonheart, and we have some bank functionality there that was done with help of, or largely by, Texifornian.
That's great to hear.
Of course, it's there aren't that many bank locations yet, but there will always be more, which will of course make them more useful in as well. That you can withdraw money and deposit money there.
Very good.
Right, actually, at the moment we have two banks with the current release. One is implemented in Old Ebonheart. This is the Prurica Bank. This is a Heartland family bank, private bank, of course. There are no real public banks in this part of Tamriel. It will also be featured in Cyrodiil, and basically wherever a Heartland family would have its economic ties. The other bank which we will have is the Lalu Company Bank. This will be implemented in the future, and the requirement for bank account there is to be a House Lalu member of a sufficient rank.
Okay. Where are we right now?
Okay, we're now in the Indoril stronghold of Almastir, and it's quite an interesting stronghold. It's a canton stronghold, and also there are in a way two parts of it. There is the actual stronghold itself, and then there's sort of Velothi. Velothi is what we use in TR for basically Dunmer who don't belong to any house, any of the great houses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Velothi town that's sort of stretched around it. You saw the sort of merchants as we came in on that bridge.
Okay.
And that's also down here in the canal.
Well, isn't the Velothi faith just like the faith before the tribunal rose up?
Well, yeah, and that is also a bit of a thing that, in a way, it's a bit of a problematic term, Velothi, because it's used for a lot of things. This is also, for example, called Velothi architecture.
Yes.
But basically the Velothi are just the Dunmer people, even to this day in a way. But it's used as a term for generic Dunmer as opposed to the Great House Dunmer,
Yes.
who belong to one of the Great Houses, of course.
Okay.
And in Indoril lands, you get quite a few Velothi towns. That was also in the last Old Ebonheart release. You were able to see some of them, like Dondril.
Mhm.
And those are sort of that, even though they don't belong to House Indoril, they are in the territory of House Indoril and sort of paid in a way taxes to them that not always in forms of money, but that they what they produce, they give a bit of it to the Indoril and all of that. So they're in
Okay.
a sort of a serf-like relationship to the Indoril.
That makes sense. So let's see.
So-
This is the temple.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. This currently sort of this lower part is in a way also part of the Velothi settlement
Mhm.
on Almastir. And then as you get further up where we want to go, then you get to the stronghold. And then finally on the east side of Almastir, you will also get an old monastery, which is probably the oldest building in the place, which has the Bloodstone Shrine, which is the shrine that I mentioned that is associated with the crossing of the river by Velo.
Okay. So you guys are all running out the front door.
I think we'll head out here, and
I was
a
busy
bit nice
praying.
to-
I was busy praying to the tribunal. You know, it's what people in Imperial armor do. So
Certainly.
I'm a Dunmer in full Imperial Knight armor, Templar armor. I mean, but
I mean that's why you have to pray. Otherwise, the ordinators might beat you up.
it's
Show them
true.
that still faithful.
Yeah, exactly. See, I'm faithful. I promise.
I just wanted to say one of the things that I like about Almastir is that back when the original developers were putting together Vivek City,
Mhm.
they had wanted all the cantons to be open to the air, and they ran into some technical difficulties getting that to work and not causing horrible frame rate.
Mhm.
And we took that inspiration into Almastir, and so we have the inner canton that's inside, just like Vivek, and then we have these bridges and the merchants all outside that the original developers had considered doing for Vivek.
So, I gotta say, OpenMW has been kind of a boon in that sense. You know, you have a lot more to work with in theory, moving forward. As far,
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of an ongoing issue that our imaginations are always bigger sometimes than what the game engine can handle. And you'll sometimes see this in old Ebonheart, where some
Yes.
people with old machines run into really terrible frame rate. Almost there can sometimes do that. But with Open Morrowind, it's kind of, well, it's opened up the boundaries of what the machine can do.
Yep. So,
You know, and you also notice that both with TR and also with the other province mods, that the quest designers, for example, are very sort of tend to be very interested in designing the quests or the sort of interiors that you go to in ways that works both with single player and with multiplayer. You know that it's also that you get environments that are interesting to play in multiplayer, which are suited for multiplayer experiences where you have enough room to move around and that sort
Yep.
of thing.
by the way, what's this bug over here? Can you? We haven't discussed this yet, but TR features new creatures, doesn't it?
Yes, never as many creatures as we want to have, but it does still have new creatures. And this here is called the Yeth bug, and it's a bit of a vicious fellow.
Can I just
It's
say
sort
something?
of like giant mosquito.
Hmm.
When you said, what is this bug here? My heart stopped in place briefly.
Yes. For
I
those
think
who
it's
don't
in the stream.
know, David is kind of responsible for the multiplayer, or at least partially responsible for the multiplayer that we're doing right now. So anytime we talk about bugs, he immediately thinks he made a mistake and it's all his fault. which isn't necessarily true, but you know, it's something he's
I'm
thinking.
glad it was a living bug.
Yes.
Well,
All right.
an
So.
in-game creature that was an insect.
All right, we were talking about the open spaces more suited to multiplayer, and really because Vardenfell is an island, you figure things would be a bit more cramped as opposed to the mainland being a bit more open. Would you say so, Nomi?
That's definitely the case. Of course, until now, the way that a lot of TR land has been made, especially early on, where there wasn't that much coordination between different modders and each basically just got their patch. This was really long ago of land and then they just made it. You tended to get tons of sort of, how do you say, squared off sections of landmass with mountain ranges and so on, which made it very tight and narrow.
Yeah.
But now we do look at the landscaping in a broader sense, and when planning out regions and so on, we have some regions which are more mountainous and more tight, but then we also plan for other regions which will be more open, and hopefully also where you'll be able to get some stuff like giant bugs moving around on the landmass, which is difficult to get looking good with Morrowind unless you really have large open spaces.
Someone's asking about the shield that Nomi's using currently.
Oh yeah, this shield that I have is going to be an artifact that you'll be able to get for a quest in Old Ebonheart. But it has a certain intentional resemblance to my avatar that I generally use on the forums and really most places. And so I'm wearing it as a sort of nice identifier that one of the modders made the shield, and it's supposed to be a shield for Locan, but happens to resemble my avatar a bit, to put it that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there are basically two places that we could go from here. We could keep going east to the Indoril stronghold, Rodir, or we could go down into the monastery and look at that interior, which is quite atmospheric.
Well, we'll go to one place first and then the other area next, so lead on.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll go down here. And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure how much or if we'll be able to get any question content in this release, and if we do get to that, I might want one of the other TR folks to take over, as some of them who we have here actually implemented some of these quests that are in this location and will know it a lot better than even I would.
At the same time, there might be value in not necessarily spoiling the quest content for players who might want to go through it. They might appreciate being able to see what kind of sights there are to see in this, but then leaving the experience up to them. So, I mean, if we want to be a light touch if we want to go through any quests, I'm just saying.
And the other thing that has to be said is that we did do some quest testing before this, and with mixed results, so we're not entirely sure if the quest will work out on multiplayer. It's not just a sort of problem with getting to work in multiplayer.
I understand.
You see on the ground here maybe some blood.
There's someone watching.
You can turn on distant land. It is an option. However, it will impact the frame rate. Yes, it will in certain areas. So in this case, if we go over to video and we were to go to detail, you can see the view distance here. And in this case, I believe there is a distant land option. It's just turned off at the moment. So, the TR quests don't work out of the box in Test 3MP. Most of them do, actually. Most of the quests do. However, occasionally you'll run into one or two that simply don't due to scripting and how things are working. However, you know, that's something that they would look at. The authors of OpenMW would look at, Test 3MP would look at. You know, people would figure out why it wasn't functioning and probably fix it, I imagine, over time.
Yeah, especially because the stream brought attention to it. But that is, in a way, a lot of the recent TR quests have been very impressive also in terms of scripting. That study with Old Ebonheart, the Thieves Guild quest line, and with the new release as well, which make for really interesting quests to play through. But of course, that does mean that when you try to get it to work with stuff like OpenMW, it can be, as in there can be things that just don't work out so well out of the box, and where you have to sort of figure out how you can patch it up.
So
I'd say it's more of a multiplayer issue because many of the scripts were just designed with single player in mind. It's not
Okay.
really an open MW issue as much these days because it
Right.
tends to be very compatible with all of the single player stuff.
What's the story with the blood in this temple?
Yeah, so that's basically that's one of the pilgrimages that is available to players.
Mhm.
And basically, the idea is that you can actually come up to this shrine here.
Okay.
And then you can get the shrine message, and that already sort of gives a summary of it.
Hmm.
But that basically is just with Veloth, that he had this long pilgrimage, which is of course very arduous, and that he just walked the whole way. And so then, as a Bloodstone Shrine, you basically walk just across almost here, just a small section of it, with a stone under your shoe, and that's sort of to feel a bit of the pain of that Veloth and that the other Chimer felt as they were going on their pilgrimage route east across Morrowind.
That makes sense. So,
And so these blood splotches are basically from other pilgrims who made this pilgrimage.
with the stones in their shoes.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Where to next?
So now we've seen some of the Hlaalu areas on the west side of the Thair,
Mm-hmm.
and now we've been looking at Almasthir in the center with a temple which is trying to remain neutral. And so next we'll be looking a bit at the Indoril side of the river.
Okay.
Just have to get out of this location first.
I was gonna say, you do remember how to get out, right?
Thankfully I do, yeah.
Okay. I do remember, like, there are some rather large dungeons in parts of TR compared to Vanilla Morrowind, I've noticed.
Yeah, there definitely are.
I can spare a few moments.
Some of the locations, the location we're going next to is Roadir. And you're quite lucky in this stream because I'm the one who made it, so I know where everything is. Otherwise, for people who don't, know where everything is, it's very easy to get lost there. And it's an exterior location; it's an Indoril location.
Right.
And it isn't. The Indoril aren't very friendly to Outlanders, and so they didn't design their stronghold of Roadir to be friendly to Outlanders either.
So, someone thought you were talking about Vardenfell when you were talking about the pilgrimage. They didn't realize that this is the pilgrimage, in from Cyrodiil all the way up.
Yeah, this is the full pilgrimage, indeed, to Necrom.
Yes, this is the pilgrimage that Veloth, the original founder of their religion, made originally. Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yep,
And
just like Vardenfell has you do a pilgrimage to the Seven Shrines, if I recall correctly, over Vivek. We kind of took that also onto the mainland, where there's a few pilgrimages in Necrom, I believe, and of course the one that you just saw today with the Bloodstone Shrine, that kind of outlines the temple and the temple's beliefs.
So while Vivek created this huge mythos about himself on Vardenfell, this is more toward the root of the Dunmer people, even before the tribunal, right?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Veloth was the one who, back when Dunmer were Chimer, and even before that, Altmer, he was the one who helped them break away from the Altmer and Somerset Isles and come across all the way to Morrowind to start a new life.
Okay.
So he lived, gosh, I'm not quite sure of the time, but centuries before the tribunal ever arrived on the scene.
Yes. Now,
And
okay.
I was going to say that over here you can see a little shrine. These sort of things you'll always find along this Veloth's path as a major pilgrimage. In this case, it's a little thing left by the people of Almasthir for pilgrims with their spare shoes and so on. So if the pilgrims have, if they've worn down their shoes, if they've run out of food, that sort of thing, that they can just pick up their provisions here.
Right. Okay, so this is something that I know you guys don't want to talk about, but it's got to be discussed because there are people here who have never heard this before. And people are going to hear you talking about the old Dunmeri religion, and they're going to immediately, in their heads, remember, say, Elder Scrolls Online, where you meet the Spirit of Veloth and stuff like that. And they'll remember things that are very contradictory to what you experience here. I'd argue that what you experience here is absolutely far more thought out. However, there are people who are going to look at the contradiction and go, "This is not canon!" Nomi, this is something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, we have actually with Atrionis here put together a page on our website which is about our lore, which sort of explains about the fact that we were started as a project actually before Morrowind was even released. Just when the pre-release of Morrowind is when it started, and we of course have been built up around Morrowind and around that era of Elder Scrolls lore. And we didn't want to keep with every new game that came out and had its new lore, which sometimes supplanted earlier stuff or changed it. We didn't want to then redo the whole project to suit the new lore and the new vision of Tamriel. And so we've mostly kept with the status how it was at the time of Elder Scrolls Morrowind, and we only take bits from, for example, Elder Scrolls Online if they sort of suit our lore and if they and the lore of the period that we're working with, and if they just stand on their own.
All right, so basically, if, say, content like Oblivion or Skyrim contradicted things that were made evident in Morrowind, you wouldn't take those retcons, or as the Elder Scrolls lore community would call them, the unreliable narrator, at face value. You would make them in the Morrowind image as befits Morrowind then.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, with the unreliable narrator, you can sometimes include stuff from later games, but have it not really be, or just have it be one of the various stories that are told. And with what we were talking about with the Prophet of Veloth, for example, that's quite easy because he lived, as Kavar said, as more than 4,000 years ago. He's really an ancient figure. And so you can have a lot of stories about him that are just completely different and don't fit each other at all.
Right. I know this is a topic that's been talked about to death, but every time we do a video on this, it's going to come up. Someone's going to mention it, so it's something that needs to be brought up, and how this is trying to be this project is trying to be Morrowind's interpretation of these places as opposed to Elder Scrolls Online's interpretation of these places or Oblivion's interpretation of these places. I guess that's what I'm trying to bring up. Is that more or less accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also a bit interesting because with Morrowind Online, there are at least one or two cases where they seem to have taken some lore from us because we were already around all the time. And so that's with, I think it's called Balfoyen, one of the Elder Scrolls Online locations. So that name was actually from TR.
Okay.
And so, that just shows you, and we were already around then, we were one of the sources that they apparently, looked at to get ideas from.
Of course.
And that's just how it is,
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, go on.
Sorry. You can also notice sometimes if you look at our map versus the Elder Scrolls Online map, a lot of the mountains, some of the ashlands where it's green, the river is more or less the same as in our.
Yes.
One thing I just wanted to add to about the lore is that every single Elder Scrolls game does retcon to some extent.
Correct.
And so we try to stick with the Morrowind lore because that's the game we're modding for.
All right. Sounds good. Can we get daytime and then we'll continue on our journey?
So, I mean, this next location isn't too bad to see it first at nighttime. So actually, maybe we could do
Yeah.
that.
I'm actually gonna make time pass faster at night. Just at night. Hold on.
Could you actually wait on that a bit?
Yeah.
Yep, this place looks good at night.
Okay.
But yeah, as in with this pilgrimage here with Pheleth's Path, eventually we plan to have the whole location that the whole pilgrimage route that you'll be able to just play through in game, but that'll be a really mammoth pilgrimage, as in that'll be, I think more than the 7 graces in the original game. That'll be a huge undertaking to really go on this whole pilgrimage in one go.
Makes sense.
Probably one of the final pilgrimages for the highest temple rank, in fact. That's one of the plans we have.
Right, because you're planning on expanding the factions beyond just what's in Vardenfell, right?
Yeah, and that's actually one of those other things that gets asked a lot. One of those common questions is whether TR will have a main quest. And TR doesn't really plan to have a main quest at the moment, but one thing that it will do is that with the Great House factions and also the Imperial Legion and the Temple, probably, as in that's the plan, they're the sort of major political factions of Morrowind, and they will get a lot more content. The vanilla factions will be expanded, and in the end, those quest lines will basically be, each of them will be basically as large as the Morrowind main quest line, as in with the plans that we currently have. And so those are basically our equivalent to the are going to be our equivalent to the main quest. But,
Morrowind's main quest.
Yeah.
Morrowind's main quest is a very tough act to follow, and I think it's better to supplement that with some of our own faction content than to try to come up with like that, but better. Like, how do you get cooler than the main quest?
I would not attempt to follow up on the main quest at all. I would. This is just me. I'm not you. I'm not a TR developer, so keep this in mind. I would absolutely think about having a bunch of little plot lines kind of mingle together into some sort of climax. Not a main quest per se, but a big region quest that starts off as something incidental and has 4 acts and a an actual climax to it. However, no, I would not make it a follow-up to Morrowind's main quest. That's suicide. Also, someone asked, what are these NPCs doing? Nomi, are you an NPC? Jump twice if you're an NPC. Okie dokie then. So, let's continue on. Where are we now?
Okay, so now we are sort of at a road towards the Indoril stronghold, and it leads off of the main pilgrimage route, because usually the Indoril strongholds, they call them chapels, and they usually won't be that easy to reach, actually, that they'll often be on mountaintops, so this one isn't, or in other strange locations, and so that's where we're headed right now.
Okay.
And Atlee.
Yeah.
And yeah, with all of the, you can sort of tell with TR that we've generally paid a lot of attention to keeping the atmosphere of the original game by the way that how most of us are dressed up here, that you're not, decked out in random bits of glass and all that stuff. I mean, clothing that you might see from an NPC just standing around.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Someone asked, will Indoril NPCs have mohawks?
Some of them.
Okay.
Yes.
What is this? This looks lovely.
Yeah, this is basically how the Indoril chapels are, that they are incredibly fancy and they're very important places and very powerful places. And so this location here, Roadir, is the main Indoril stronghold on the big, major river. And we'll be taking a close look at it, but it's quite a place to explore.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to... Oh.
I was gonna say, are slaughterfish everywhere?
Yeah, well, we haven't put cliff races everywhere, at least.
Oh, okay, good.
Not yet.
Not yet? I saw some interestingly passive cliff racers. up north when I was checking out the Firewatch area. They were not angry cliff racers, which was very interesting to me.
I suppose there's... Yeah, I'm not sure. It would actually surprise me if somebody at one point just changed the fight level of some TR cliff racers, but I don't know about that. Generally, I'm in favor of... It's always hard to get new creatures, but I always like the idea of having, variants of cliff racers that look a bit different and are maybe not quite as hostile, but still that you have those sort of... that you have them as visual birds flying about.
Right.
But not necessarily, swarms of them.
Hey, someone was asking if the fish was a player. I thought that was hilarious.
Is there
Maybe,
a
but yeah,
function for that yet, David, in the multiplayer? Can you become a...
Do you want to see me become a fish? Because we can do that.
I know, I was
just
wondering if there was like a possession mechanic where you could take control of an NPC.
No, but you can disguise yourself as creatures.
No, we did that in another stream. We made everyone Fargoth, remember? Alright. I mean, that's a creature, isn't it? So, what's the story about this area with all the bridges and everything? It looks lovely.
Yeah, so this is one of the Indoril chapels, which are basically like palaces for the powerful Indoril lords. And you'll see that in this case, in this location here, we have some rickshaws. And that will be, later there will be a sort of exclusive to members of House Indoril. They'll have a travel network that goes between the chapels into Almalexia, which is the Indoril capital. And they are basically a very hierarchical house.
Okay.
And they are really, basically the whole house is sort of a house of nobles and their retainers.
Can you tell me why this place, Akamora and Mournhold, all seem to have the same architecture?
Yeah, that is because they are all basically built by House Indoril. And the Indoril started in what's now called Almalexia, was probably called Mournhold before, Almalexia was a god.
Yes.
And then they basically spread out from there when the tribunal came to power, sort of as missionaries, pretty much, spreading the faith of the tribunal and getting rid of those who still held on to the Daedric faith and so on.
Right.
And then when doing so, they built these strongholds, sort of missionary outposts, and that's why they then also have the same architecture.
Okay.
And all of these chapels they'll tend to be quite varied in appearance, but have some things in common. And one of those things that they have this structure here called the crossing. In this case, it's called the Crossing of Lands. And this is generally just where you can go to get quests, even if you're not a member of House Indoril.
Okay.
And this is where people come to petition the Indoril to do things like if they're serfs who live in a town outside, if they have some problem, then they can come over here to petition the Indoril.
Okay.
And it's called a crossing because it's where various basically people meet. It's like a meeting place. And so you can see down here in the basement, they also have their ancestor burial.
Right.
Because the ancestors also come here. And then up at the top, we can also go there.
Are those glass daggers lootable?
They are. This guy might
They
get
also
mad,
have
though.
ownership on them, so you may want to be careful about that.
Invisibility.
And this figure that you see over here, called Indoril Danvas, he is a member of the Indoril family.
Okay.
And the Indoril family is sort of very large for a family, but really powerful. And and they all have basically that sort of name. Indoril Danvas or Indoril Ilvi is the one who's in charge of this place.
Makes sense. We got the Dagoths, we got the Indorils.
Yeah, exactly that. That idea that they might not like the comparison, of course. But
absolutely not.
Yeah, and before the ghost fence was built, this space here would have been a sort of waiting door with which the Indoril would have been able to communicate with the ancestors.
Okay.
But now all of the Indoril that are supposed to be go to Necrom along Valeth's path.
Right. Okay, so where are we heading to next?
Well, we can quickly head over to the top of this interior.
We apparently went the wrong way. Let's see.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
there you are.
Commander.
Yeah.
Where does that bridge lead? The one that I was on just outside there.
We can go there next. Let's see here.
Do I know you? Is there something you need?
Up
But
here is the Hall of Invocation, and this is basically where the Indril sometimes summon Daedra. They do not worship the Daedra really anymore. You know, they worship the Tribunal, but they still sometimes summon Daedra to sort of either make deals with them or to even to interrogate them in some cases if they think that they have done something bad.
okay.
And so the Indril society is sort of a very legalist society. The Indril see themselves as sort of, you know, judge and often jury and executioner if they can get away with it.
Mhm.
And they have this very complex legal and theological system to them. And that's also, I think, tied to the place where the bridge
Are there
was on the other
any
side.
new lore books that touch on that?
Is there something you need?
There are definitely. I actually have to think if there is even a good summary of the Indra lore, though. I was actually planning to make a sort of. I was considering making a video at one point where I'd sort of introduce the Indra for TR's YouTube channel, just to put a really shameless plug in there. But in terms of books, I don't know if we really have a good summary yet of Indra. That would be a good idea. That usually what you find instead are sort of, you know, bits of atmospheric snippets about Indra lore.
Mm-hmm.
And this location here.
The
So
sanctum.
this is sort of Indra temple. You see. Where they of course don't, you know, worship Daedra, they worship the Tribunal, so you can see them up there.
Right.
But the layout is in a way sort of similar to, or the appearance of the place a bit similar to a Daedric shrine, but of course in this architecture set. And so this is where the Indril priests are.
Go ahead.
Okay.
And now I have to see if you can navigate this rather tight interior. I want to come down here.
Okay, so downstairs.
Yeah.
You may speak.
And now we have the fun thing of an NPC in the way.
I'm listening. Go
I can
ahead.
jump on the table.
Yeah.
Where's the dance command?
You're in an Indoril chapel. It's been forbidden.
There's no dancing in this place.
Dancing is forbidden.
Yes.
I think that was a
here
song.
we see a sort of Indril courtroom
Ooh.
where the person being tried would sit on this chair.
Okay.
Up above him are the banners of the saints. And then over there, you can't quite see it, but above the sort of mushroom tree is where the Indril Ilvi would sit to sort of in his judgment seat up there.
Okay.
Sort of divided from the rest of the people there.
Oh, and this lock with an 80 level trapped is... I say.
Exactly. And there are some very nice things behind there if you can get in, but
Ooh.
very expensive stuff, which is why it has that lock.
I say.
And basically, this whole place, as I said, is more or less a palace of the of Indril Ilvi who lives here. And it is quite large and quite complex. That we were just in the sanctum here, and then in the center you have the crossing of lamps. And then on the south side you have the harbor, because as I said, the Vluthi merchants or the Vluthi villages all sort of give some of their wares to the Indoril who lord over them.
Okay.
And then, of course, that you need to sort of administer those goods and make sure that those villages are getting what they need and all that. And so all of this goes on in this location.
That's how taxes worked in medieval society. They basically just took some of the goods is in the same way barter system worked. That's how taxes worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is also a thing that you'll have to watch with Indoril society, because because Indoril society is largely based around the barter system. And so a lot of the merchants won't actually have a lot of cash on them, and you have to trade stuff with them. And it's mainly in Indoril locations where you might start to see some better merchants, especially if you're a member of House Indoril. Then you get access to their craftsmen who have really good stuff.
Okay.
But you have to be in Indoril.
Makes sense.
So here you, for example, see their harbor where you have slaves who haul up the cargo. The Indoril are very reliant on slavery.
Okay.
And then you also have these figures like this woman right here with the orange, sort of orange shirt. And that she is one of the tollmer who basically levy the tolls and so on and administer all of that trade and flow of goods.
I see.
So a very strong
Go ahead,
bureaucracy.
Outlander. What do you need?
Makes sense.
And then we can probably still head over to the residence where the Indoril actually live.
Wait, they have a place they live? You mean they don't
Yes.
just stand in place all day?
Yeah, no, and that is also one of the things when I was building this place, that I did try and make sure that everyone would actually have a bed that they could sleep in, which isn't usually the case in Morrowind, but those are the sort of little details that TR developers will tend to end up just focusing on.
Okay. I mean, the idea that NPCs would actually have lives outside of whatever their game function is, that's just insane. Ah,
Yeah.
one of these curvy statues I see. Is it Almalexia?
Yeah, that's Alexia.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, and she's of course considered very important to the Indoril because she was an Indoril herself. And Nerevar actually only became Indoril by sort of marrying her and marrying into the Indoril house.
Okay.
And so she's also the reason why he's an Indoril, and the Indoril sort of claim a connection to all of the tribunal.
Yes.
In general, they sort of see themselves as the most important of the Dunmer houses in a way. The sort of better among equals type idea.
Yes.
Of course, that's true for all the houses.
Someone
Yeah, of
asked.
course.
Someone asked: Is when making Tamriel Rebuilt, do they follow Bethesda's mandate in modern Bethesda's mandate of KISS? Keep it simple, stupid.
Not really.
Ooh,
Hey, no.
Sometimes you try.
Now-
Sometimes you try, especially when a release is coming up, but we always fail.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a moment to play the clip for everybody.
What's the story with Bethesda stories? How do we make our stories? KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. This is my own personal rule for myself, right? Keep it simple, stupid. What does that mean? When I'm coming up with a story for a game, I like to concentrate on strong central themes. You know, Skyrim. Skyrim is a game about dragons, right? Even in the studio. What is the game about? It's about dragons. But the story is not really about dragons, right? It is about the lone hero. It is much more biblical than a lot of the other stories we've done. It's about the Dragonborn, the Dovahkiin, is much more of a messiah sort of character.
Okay. Now, anyone who didn't have the context for that now has the proper context. That is modern Bethesda writing. And it seems like you guys are trying to kind of split away from that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's funny that you played that clip because there's another clip from, or not clip, but more screenshot from Emil that we post a lot. where he's talking about the Dark Brotherhood and about how he sort of took the lore that existed
Yes.
for them, that he took it and then he made it evil or something like that.
No, it's even better than that. He says biblical. He says that it's that the Dovahkiin is biblical. First of all, Khan mentioned this earlier, but what did the Dovahkiin sacrifice, and who did the Dovahkiin redeem? No one. So Emil doesn't know what biblical is, first and foremost. Secondly, the thing is that the Dark Brotherhood, he did ask Todd Howard, can I change the lore of the Dark Brotherhood? And then Todd Howard just kind of said, yeah, just give him a dismissive gesture. And the thing is that what he changed it to was Catholicism. And literally, you've got the listener of the Dark Brotherhood, who's the Pope. You got Jesus Christ, who is the Night Mother. And then you got Sithis, who's God. The speakers of the Black Hand, those are the Cardinals.
Yep.
Actually, I would argue that the Night Mother is more like the Mother Mary. She's always depicted with these skeletal children and things. But yeah, it's
Bit of a mixture.
Not something that we are going to stick with in particular. The Dark Brotherhood is going to stay closer to its original incarnation in this game.
Okay.
This is a mostly professional organization of assassins,
Mhm.
which does have some cult phases in parts.
Right.
The role that they are supposed to have in Oblivion is taken over by Brotherhood of Seth.
Okay.
It's a bit further in the south. And in general, we try to aim to keep things a bit more complex than just blatantly copying real-life organizations or religions and inverting them.
Were you aware in Elder Scrolls 2 they worship Mephala?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are some contradictory texts between the Morak Tong worshipping Mephala, the Dark Brotherhood worshipping Mephala, or some worshipping Sithis or Lorcan, and there are a couple of texts that mention that.
Yeah. Bit of a cutoff there. Well then, what I was gonna say was that there was some really wacky stuff in Elder Scrolls 2, though. For example, the different gods didn't like each other very much. For example, Dibella didn't like Akatosh. If you actually look in the internal factioning, Dibella absolutely despises Akatosh, and the reason is because time steals beauty. And you look at all the different gods and their likes and dislikes, and it turns out that the Dark Brotherhood is allied with RK because they're both death. And it's very interesting. It has absolutely no bearing on Morrowind lore at all because they completely replaced that. Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard rewrote the book, but it's interesting to look at where things came from and then see what they turned into. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
It's also been quite interesting because with all of the sort of different developers who work on projects like these, that they can sort of have quite a lot of influence by themselves. And particularly, when there's talk about Daggerfall, but especially with the Elder Scrolls Arena, which it has to be said, a lot of the TR members and so on, myself sort of included, tend to ignore and think, it was the first entry, it had some interesting bits to it, but, had some bits that weren't really that Elder Scrolls yet. But there's one member in particular who's just very familiar with Arena and is always quick to try and push the bits that he considers good about it.
Yeah.
But it's always a sort of interesting thing then that leads to these discussions with, what do you want to keep about it? What do you want to change? What can be sort of kept as a nod, but not directly, and those sort of things.
Well, mainly, the problem is Arena was, and let's be honest here, it was a fairly bad copy of Ultima Underworld. And they did some really good things, like, a big expansive world, but the problem with that is the Somerset Isles looks exactly the same as the Imperial City, looks exactly the same as Morrowind. Like, obviously, it really wasn't a good idea to do all of Tamriel. And, you know, like, obviously, as we visit each province gets its own flavoring. And that's something that... Those pillows are terrible, by the way. What's it called? They each gets their own flavoring. And that's just kind of how it's gonna go. Is like Arena is simply isn't representative of the content because it's a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. That's really what it is.
So I do find sort of interesting that you mentioned with the Elder Scrolls in general, of course, that you started with Arena, which had all of Tamriel, and then you have Daggerfall, which is sort of chunks of two provinces of Hammerfell and Tyrell, and then Morrowind is, of course, just an island in a province, and then you go back to Oblivion Skyrim, which are whole provinces, and then Elder Scrolls Online, which is again sort of most of Tamriel. You sort of splotches all over Tamriel. And it's always an interesting thing also when you look at the maps that the coastline of Vattenfell, the setting of Morrowind, tends to be way more detailed in the official maps than the other coastlines.
I'm gonna go ahead and bring up my my maps here. You got the Iliac Bay here, which is High Rock up here, Hammerfell down here. You got Vardenfell over here. So I mean, there's absolutely so much landmass in this game, where in Daggerfall, where it's all of Great Britain, and yet they weren't able to diversify it well enough. Then we come over to Vardenfell, and everything is very, very detailed, but tiny. And then we get into where we get the whole provinces like Cyrodiil, and everything feels, I don't know, like a kiddie park version of the original, like some kind of weird representation of it, I guess. That's how I feel about it anyway. Oblivion and Skyrim they're kind of like a miniaturized representation of the actual provinces, basically. I don't know.
Yeah, and of course, to a degree, all games have to be that. And it's also an interesting thing with Morrowind itself, that when Bethesda decided that they needed to put it on just one island, originally Vattenfall was planned to be a sort of ash-blasted wasteland with some Redoran presence, but not too much else.
Okay.
But then when they decided that they wanted to reduce to just the island, just Vattenfall, then they basically crammed as many factions on there as possible, and tried to give a general representation of really Morrowind as a whole. Also in terms of the terrain, which is no longer just Ashlands, but you also got like the Scadian Isles and the Gracelands, to give you a general idea of how Morrowind is supposed to be. And that even if they couldn't show it to the full extent, of course, the game never can. It is never one-to-one scale. But I think that they did a lot of better job, at least to my taste, of picking up on all of the important themes and exploring them somewhat, and really giving a taste of how the world is.
Right. Okay, so where are we going next?
So here we can actually go quite open-ended. This place is quite easy to get lost in, of course, but there's always something to find where you get lost. And otherwise, and I'm not sure if people want to see more of the landscape or more of the interiors.
I would say more of the landscape. It's better if they discover the interiors on their own, I think.
Yeah.
In that case, I would like to make a suggestion. We could go south further from the Aanthirin into TR Preview and check out the Thir Valley. There has been some work done there. And go to the Redoran twin strongholds of Alt Ilival and Alt Marak.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and we could maybe pass by the town of Imra as well. That's another Velothi town.
Okay.
And that'll also be quite interesting to look at first of all, we want to figure out how we want to get. I suppose you can just swim off of here.
Swimming? How do we do that?
There is someone watching.
So maybe it would be best to go down to the harbor first.
Okay. Either that or go crunch. Yes, indeed. Someone mentioned that it would be a better stream if all our characters were naked.
We don't have the right loadout for that.
Ah, okay. Sorry. Not happening. No dangly parts for you. All right.
I guess what we should sort of falsely advertise that maybe that'll come at the end of the stream and then just not do it.
Ah,
But just so to get that one person sticking around.
that's funny, but no.
Okay. So we're moving along Velos Path again, but here we want to start heading southwards.
Can we get daytime again, David?
All right.
Bam. Still raining, but daytime. Yay.
Well, at least the weather seems to be synced again, because it's raining for me too.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, same here.
Yes, David is the primary developer on the Test 3 MP. That's the Morrowind Multiplayer. So, he does things with server commands.
Yeah, he's also been very helpful in setting this stream up.
Yep. He can teleport you around stuff? Yeah, I mean, we could teleport ourselves around and stuff. I believe we have moderator commands for that.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that we actually teleport to good locations.
Yes. The answer is always to teleport into Lost Kogaroon. That's the only place you ever want to go. Are there any incompatibilities with the current version of Morrowind Rebirth? With this current version? I know there used to be incompatibilities, but the developer resolved them at some point.
I'm not quite sure what the current situation is like, but I know before the compatibilities were caused that Rebirth replaced some of the meshes of trees and things that we also use, and so it would work in Rebirth, but then you would come to our world and there'd be this giant tree in the middle of nowhere because
Yeah.
Another problem are the border cells, of course. There are landscape themes. The third incompatibility is that TR Travels overrides the travel NPCs, which is a bit of a problem because Rebirth added scripts to them and placed some travel markers somewhere else.
Okay.
And the fourth incompatibility is a general problem that TR is made for the vanilla game and is such overpowered as compared to Rebirth's generally low-powered items.
Okay.
It's not exactly game-breaking, any of it, but last I checked, the author of Rebirth recommended that they that people don't use TR and MR together. It's just a recommendation. You can do it. You won't find anything game-breaking, but if you can live with these problems, of course.
Yes.
Or if somebody makes a compatibility patch.
Yes, I would love to see a good compatibility patch made for multiplayer. That would be nice. Because I tend to do campaigns around that. Alright. Let's see. In these areas, are there new Daedric ruins and caves with high-level enemies? Someone asked.
Yes, yeah. Though it's a bit harder to find, really high-level enemies in this particular place, but you can still find them if you search for them. For the most part, this is a sort of a bit of a simpler area, a bit like the Ascadian Alps on Vadenfell,
Mhm.
and so you won't be too challenged here, too in risk if you play with the new character. You won't be in too much risk, but if you seek the challenge, you can definitely find it.
Someone asks, are we in the preview, or are we still in content that is a part of the main release?
We are still in main release content, but we are getting closer to preview.
Okay.
And so if I'll say already now that if the landscape starts to look a bit weird, that'll of course be the sure sign that we're in a preview and that stuff is not quite finished yet. But
Okay.
we're still in release content.
Right.
And over there, not sure if you can see that there are some creatures in the water there.
Those are interesting. They're floating over the water. They're
Exactly,
bugs.
they're a bit like giant dragonflies.
Mm-hmm.
And those are juvenile river striders.
Right.
And you might know that there are river striders in Tylvanis which are used for transportation.
Mhm.
And the dress also use the river striders. And they basically, these juveniles, when they get a bit older, they're no longer able to fly. They are, just stick to the water.
Mhm.
And then they retreat to a huge system of caves called the salt washes.
Okay.
And sort of grow larger and more bloated there. And there the dress use them as a way of transporting the salt rice that they
Was
produce.
gonna say, in Port Telvanis, isn't there a couple river striders over there?
Yeah, it is also in Tylvani lands. They are used as a sort of transportation network as well.
Okay.
Bit
But
like silt striders, but river striders.
Yeah.
yeah, but these juveniles you'll only see over here on Lake Andaram, it's called.
Someone mentioned that these juveniles look like cazadors.
That's frightening.
Yeah, they aren't as hostile, I don't think.
Okay.
Actually, not. But
Oh, hello.
oh, there's one over there.
Yes.
No, that's me. That's me. Don't kill me.
That's David in
Sorry.
disguise. Nice. David disguised himself as a river strider. Can you jump? As the river strider? Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, David using his multiplayer cheats.
See you later, guys.
Levitation.
Hey,
Okay, there we go.
So that's the graceful juvenile river strider we saw over there.
Yes. All right. Perfect. Let's go. All right.
So talking about high level content in
Mhm.
TR, there was a definite intentional push for more high level content. The more and more we go, I feel like there's certainly a huge plethora of low level content because I feel like
Right.
that's where most people encounter TR is they start a new character in TR and they want to be able to do something. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have people who already have super high level characters and they're like, well, these are all low level quests. So I will say, in the monastery where we were at,
Mhm.
there is a very high level quest chain that you can encounter there if you are a member of the temple. So if you are a high level character, highly recommend doing that one. I will say I made that, so I might be biased, but I think it's pretty great.
Okay. I was going to say that I have a tendency to do maybe 20, 30 levels worth of Vardenfell content, and then I go, you know what? It's time to go to the mainland. And then I destroy everything. And I'm a living god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. So I would much appreciate, high-level content in TR, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
kind of
definitely.
intentional with Old Ebonheart that was a lower level
Mhm.
area, kind of like Satanine. But that's certainly going to change as we push further south and also
Yeah.
going up north into the
And
Red
already
Rim.
with our next release, which we'll called Dominion of Dust, that'll be in a much rougher landscape, and
Okay.
so there will also be you'll find a lot more challenges. Also, just outside, you don't have to search for a challenge there.
So where are we right now?
This is where we want to go to. This is the lovely town of Imra, which is under Indoril control. And it is basically the major sort of cargo port. It isn't so much a settlement where a lot of people live, but it's a major cargo port with which the Indril trade with House Stress. And they mainly trade for salt rice and slaves from House Stress.
Okay.
And in return, Indril give them various sort of very high quality wares, enchanted stuff, that sort of stuff is what Indril are good at making.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
And yeah, there's also a very interesting quest line tied over here to this location, which people can check out. But otherwise, this is sort of the closest that you'll get to actual dress content in TR mainland.
Right.
But no actual address yet.
Okay. So that'll be much later on.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Makes sense. Any plans to add on or expand, like, just to revisit some of the old areas, maybe add new dungeons and other things to the old areas, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, there are definitely plans, and there's also, for instance, a pretty high-level quest line that's currently in the works.
Okay.
It does have to be said, though, that usually also the way that it's worked with the until now is that usually the sort of new release areas will sort of take priority over those, and that when we get closer to a release, that those that content in the old maps gets a bit neglected, and that doesn't really make so much progress anymore. But there's
Right.
definitely stuff in the works there as well.
All right, so we should start considering wrapping up in about 15 minutes. So I recommend going to covering the things that you absolutely want to still cover.
Yeah, I think it would be good to head over now to some of the preview content to look at that. That'll be a nice place to wrap up a bit of an idea of what's to come in the future.
Okay.
It might be better if we COC there, but I'm not sure about any cell. So maybe someone could take a look at that, or...
We do have a command to teleport everyone to one of us, if one of us knows where we want to COC.
Can't you use the preview travel NPCs to travel to one of the towns that isn't finished yet?
I do believe so.
Good luck with that.
If we can find the travel NPC, there we go.
Okay, so I have transported everyone to another Lalu town. This is deep in the preview area. This is called Othmura. And when we go down further south, we will be a bit north of Narcissus and encounter the finished landscape that's currently in TR preview. This is no longer the Aanthirin, where we've been before. This is now another new region, the Thir Valley.
Right. These are different mushrooms.
Yeah, that's a very different landscape, and I will just reiterate, it's not really been said, but just to make sure that it gets through, is that, of course, the TR preview content does not include any quests. It isn't really considered, playable by us as a sort of game.
Okay.
But you can already see the places that we're working on, and they might still change a bit before the release, but yeah.
Let's clarify this. I got my map up. Go. We have the top part, which is like Firewatch. We got Port Telvanus. We got some of the middle areas. We got Akamora. And then we have, of course, Narcissus and stuff like that. And, like, this is all playable content. Full of quests, full of dungeons, full of stuff. All right? We got...
yeah, Necrom, not Narcissus.
You're right, Necrom. Sorry. Point is, we got Old Ebonheart, like 20 hours worth of content in this, like, small area. Tons of playable stuff, completely playable. And this new area, completely playable. However, we are teleporting over to content that is being worked on. It is not done. It is not anywhere near done, which means that, yeah, it's something that we're going to look at the preview. It's subject to change. It's not considered playable. Let's go. Map's done.
Exactly. So, yeah, this is sort of quite an interesting area because it was used to be controlled by House Zhakaron actually originally. But then after the armistice, there was basically huge political upheaval and uproar. And in the end, Hlalu ended up taking over a lot of this territory, not always aggressively, but sometimes just with the allegiances of local clans and so on just switched to Hlalu. And so you'll also see here or there, you'll see some old Zhakaron ruins. And a lot of the people still living here might have originally belonged to House Zhakaron. Here you see something, for instance.
Okay. Nice collapsed bridge here. This is interesting.
Yeah, and maybe we can actually head across there already.
Okay. Yes. Whoops. Heading on up. This area looks interesting. Definitely in disrepair. I can see, like, the buildings that are sunk into the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can see this old tower, for instance.
Yeah. The tower's falling down, crumbling. Makes sense.
And then there, across the water,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to see two towers that are facing each other across the river. I just need to find a way down.
All right. Someone asked, what's the secret temple thing in release?
It's a secret.
All right.
Go check it out yourself. It's gonna be glorious.
So, Nomi, come back really quick.
Yeah.
Someone thinks you're an NPC. It's, are you an NPC?
Nope, I can hop on.
What if you did the crouching instead of the hopping?
Time since I've seen one of those.
Okay, let's do this. Yeah, exactly. Dance, everybody. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, where's David? He's trying to be a fly on the wall with this, I get it, but yeah, I think he's an NPC, isn't he? Alright. Could have been a modded quest for all you know? You know, where people jump and move erratically.
Well, it took a lot of scripting to do this, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's very well scripted. These
these
NPCs are not scripted. That's it, Todd Howard. These NPCs are not scripted. Yes.
Believe me that if we could have this whole stream with actual, NPCs instead of players, and have us have walked all this way, well, we of course teleported the last bit, but even so, and that was all scripting, then I would boast about it. I mean,
yes.
That'll take some time and effort.
Right. I can tell you right now that this Nomi is not scripted. Okay?
I noticed someone in the chat mentioned whether this was near Antlers of Vivec. We're actually quite a fair bit south. The area that would have been Antlers of Vivec, we haven't yet developed.
Okay. I'm a little bit behind you guys. Not a
It's
big.
way up there.
Okay.
So yeah, and this is basically one of the two Redden strongholds, which are sort of twin strongholds which face each other on the Fear River.
Mhm.
So we're still on the same river, but we're way further down now, way further south, because
Right.
we teleported. And this is basically the only presence that House Zhakaron has left on the river. They used to own more territory.
Okay.
And except for House Sylvani, all of the major factions basically have some sort of territory on the Thir River. You know, there's Old Ebonheart with the Empire.
Mhm.
There's Almas Thir that we saw with the Temple. Hlalu, Indoril, Dress will also be sort of on the where we're by Imra, as I said, near there, the Dress will be.
Mhm.
And so all of these political factions, all on this really major river in Morrowind, and as I already said, that there will be a lot of conflicts and so on, some of which are already playable with the current release, more which will be in the next release and the release after that, dealing with this just huge conflict. And in general, TR tends to focus a bit more on the politics and the different sort of cultures and so on, or the different great houses and so on in
Mhm.
Morrowind, as opposed to the vanilla game, which had its main focus, of course, with the main storyline more on the sort of gods and the sort of metaphysical stuff that was happening.
Okay. Makes sense to me. And I mean, we've seen the content that's new. We've seen the content that's in preview. Why don't you go ahead and teleport us to some choice spots in the older TR just to show us what players can expect if they were to download and install this mod? We obviously some of the older stuff, not just what we've seen from the new release, but just give us a best hits, as it were. Someone mentioned Akamora. Someone else mentioned Old Ebonheart. These are all things that we could poke at really quick for a few minutes. It's
Who wants to handle the teleporting so that we don't all, get teleported to 50 different locations?
someone said Firewatch. I'm not going to mess with any of the console commands.
I can try, please.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yes. I'm sure that we could look at a few places, provided people know the COC codes for them. That's an issue. But
Does anyone actually know what the Sunset Access office in Old Ebonheart, that full ID is? That might be an interesting place to go. Hop over in Old Ebonheart.
I'm surprised you can't just COC to Old Ebonheart and have it go to the docks automatically.
I'm currently en route to Old Ebon.
Okay.
I am on a roof, but if you want to see beautiful roofs, you can teleport to me.
Teleport us. Bring us all over. Someone said you can tab to autocomplete. Alright, so Old Ebonheart is the imperial capital of Morrowind. It's kind of big. Each one of these houses is something. Like a shop or a residence or a thing. And it's big. So, crunch we go. So let's, I'm just gonna run down the street really quick. Because I know I went through here quite a bit during the last video, but it's quite large. So just something that I think players should have an opportunity to look at and go. Remember that there's, according to Khan, there's like 20 hours worth of content here in this city, so what was this palace called again?
It's called the Ebon Tower.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of similar to with the White Gold Tower in Cyrodiil and so on, that they basically tried to imitate that in Morrowind. as a sort of symbol of imperial power and culture in Morrowind,
Okay.
which didn't entirely succeed. They weren't able to imperialize all of Morrowind, but that's what it stands for.
According to this, there are 4 to 5 new quests added to Old Ebonheart in this release.
Yeah, indeed. As a few of those just didn't make the cut to the old Ebonheart release, but they're in now. And likewise, with the next release, you'll also get some quests in the in Aanthirin and so on that we weren't able to get into the release that we originally wanted to.
Someone asked, are there any quests that bring you to Old Ebonheart from other locations? Like breadcrumbs?
Yes, definitely there are some. So I'm not too familiar with the with where you can actually pick those up, but of course only in newer locations though, that we haven't really added new quests to older locations, east of Old Ebonheart, which lead to it.
Okay.
Someone asked for Akamora.
Please.
I'm now there. If you guys want to teleport.
Please just teleport all of us.
Yeah.
Okay. Akamora. Akamora has a really good Fighters Guild quest line, as I remember it.
Yeah, in general, Akamora has some really great quests. So
Yeah.
this is a very good location to go to for quest content.
Yeah.
And it's Fighters Guild, Mages Guild. I'll have to think of what else there was, but there's also sort of quests concerning just Akamora itself as the sort of what's going on there with the different rival noble families.
I remember there's a quest with to find out this guy's family name, something like that.
Yeah, so Akamora in general is a really good place for quest content.
Yeah.
And the older sort of
this is more of the older content, where like Old Ebonheart was just like 1 or 2 major releases ago, as far as like completed quest content, whereas this is some older quest content, you would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I always said this guy looks like Sonic the Hedgehog with his helmet there.
Yeah, the Morrowind glass helmet is always quite impressive.
Yes.
Definitely.
I don't like you much.
Oh my, did he say that to you as well?
Nope. I mean, I'm a fellow Bosmer, so he's very polite to me, of course.
Yeah, of course. I don't like you much.
Owner know you're off your leash?
Oh. There we go then. So.
And then whenever you're ready, I'm in Necrom, which I believe could be our last.
Yeah,
that would be a good place.
Let's do it. Okay, so Necrom is where the dead are buried, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
this was the last place that Veloth, who we talked about earlier, came to. And they built the great city of Necrom there, which is where they bury their dead. So it's a city of the
dead.
And over here, that's a Ordinator in mourning. That's one of the Ordinators whose special task is to watch over Necrom and the spirits of the dead.
Probably just a ghost.
Probably just a ghost. Nice.
And this is actually quite a nice place to end up as well, because this is, of course, the final location in that in Veloth's Path, and that huge pilgrimage road that we were walking along. And there's also some temple quest lines, quest content in Almastir will also lead you here to Necrom. So this is a location that you will end up seeing if you play new release content as well.
Okay. Are there any landmarks here in Necrom that we should look at really quick?
Yeah, we can definitely go over to the Necrom Temple.
Let's have a look at that.
Someone was asking if it's custom voice acting. Yes. the Ordinators in Morning here have new voices. And I believe some of the Ordinators in Almost There also have new voices.
So in here? Oh, there's a ghost fence here. Well, Oath of the Ancestors. I request entry to the House of Ghosts.
I've seen one of those.
Well, there we go then. Interesting.
Yeah, so Necrom is where many of the dead, of course, are buried of the Dunmer.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes figures like there are some vanilla sources, I believe, or vanilla sources mentions that the Bone Walker of Nehavar is under Necrom, and so of course he isn't there yet, but we intend to include him as well.
Are you're talking about Nerevar?
Yes, the Nerevar, yeah. But there is
Ah.
actually a Bethesda source that says that his Bone Walker is apparently down here.
Okay.
And so we'll be adding him, and it's the catacombs are very vast. And on top of the catacombs, there's the Necrom Temple, which is what I actually want to get to, but I have to figure out how. Because this is definitely another one of those locations which TR has quite a few of, which are very huge and very easy to get lost in.
Yeah, you can't meet your old Neri corpse yet. Not yet. All right, there's David as a bone walker, a bone lord, I should say. So at this point, for anyone who's interested in playing Tamriel Rebuilt, you would say, other than the preview content, it's playable, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, just if you just play TR mainland, then that's all going to be.
Okay. So, in other words, you'd go to the website, you'd go to download, you'd go to either the Nexus or the main mirror, and you'd just download it. You download the Tamriel data as well. Make sure you follow the procedure of registering your BSAs, or you're going to be in for some unfortunate results. But follow the instructions on the page, and you can be playing this content. And it integrates with Morrowind, so it's not like this is content that's going to release 12 years from now. This is content that you can play right now. So that's number one. Number two, if you are interested in actually contributing to the project, actually helping to build this stuff, because, I mean, let's look at the landmass here. You got the Vardenfell, which is the vanilla game, and then you got all this content here. I'm pretty sure there's some space for people to contribute things. What kind of contributions are you looking for to the project?
Oh, yeah.
We take pretty much anything. I know we're trying to work on the Deshaun Plains, which is the Dresslands to the far south, and we're still in need of people who can make models and new creatures. But there's always going to be quest writing. There's always going to be interior development. As soon as we get those assets, those models for the Deshaun Plains, there'll be exterior development. And something that's often overlooked is we often need people to kind of help organize the mod, to help us write our handbooks, our how-tos, our tutorials. So if you have any of that kind of know-how, or if you just like to edit things, we have positions for those too.
Okay.
Yeah, and also want to add.
Sorry.
Also want to add, you don't need any experience coming into TR. We have a lot of tutorials and walkthroughs, and our members are also always sort of very helpful, showing you the right way to get a set of skills. And they're just also, so many things that you can help with the project. Things like organization, which you don't need to. You don't need to be a modder or a coder or something to be able to do. So you can just definitely come by. Discord's always a great place to start. That you can just talk to us there, and then we can see what sort of works out, where you can sort of start helping the project.
All right.
Another great one that someone mentioned in in chat is play testing. So if all you want to do is make a character and run around and try to break things, that's very helpful to us as well.
All right, so let's clarify though. If you wanted to contribute to the project, where should you go? Who should you contact? What should you do?
I think the best thing would be to go to the TR Discord. And there you can also see with the various channels, there are pins. With, for example, the Questers channel, you have pins, which pinned messages, which link to various tutorials and so on for questing. And then the most of the TR developers, all the leads and so on, are also available on Discord. And so they'll also just be able to help you, and you go there. And so that's probably the sort of best place to start start getting replies right away. Or you can, of course, go onto the forum. You can sort of make a showcase there. That with showcases, especially for things like interiors or exteriors or quest implementation, that can be done in the forums as well. But Discord is always a great place to start.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for showing up. This will be a video on the YouTubes, and when it is, I will make sure to have the appropriate links posted in the description in a pinned comment. But before we go, David, are you around by chance?
Oh yes, sure.
Yeah, well,
right
we've been playing Morrowind Multiplayer, or the project's name is Test 3MP. And David here is not a member of the Tamriel Rebuilt team. He is actually the primary developer of the Morrowind Multiplayer, Test 3MP. And I think that he should talk about it a little bit. Tell us about this particular project that's going on. The fork of OpenMW that is Test 3MP. Please talk about it.
Well, I've always wanted to play Morrowind in co-op ever since I was a child, and now you can finally do it. And hopefully I can expand it into allowing for proper MMO-like servers as well. We have a few of them, but they sometimes have issues with the content from the original game because it wasn't really designed to work as an MMO at all. And I'd like to borrow ideas from lots of other games. And for instance, it would be nice to have scripting potential, like in Gary's mod. It would be nice to have worlds you can create on the fly in game, like in Minecraft. It would be nice to have campaigns that you can be the dungeon master in, like in Neverwinter Nights. So I'd like to go in all of those directions a little bit and see how far I get.
Right. Did the OpenMW team, the Open Morrowind engine team, say anything about integrating Test 3MP eventually?
Oh, yes. It's supposed to be merged in for OpenMW 1.1.
Right.
But before that, I'm supposed to clean up the scripting system a bit and integrate that into OpenMW itself. So OpenMW and Test3MP can share a scripting system so that content made for single player will also work in multiplayer.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if people wanted to hop in and start playing Morrowind Multiplayer, Test 3MP, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, they just download a release and they open up, well, first they have to point Test 3MP to their Morrowind installation. And we have a guide for that. But once they've done that, and it's quite simple, they just need to open the server browser and join a public server or host their own. It's quite simple. To host your own server, you just run one server executable. Well, you also need to port forward if you're not playing just on LAN. If you want people from the outside internet to be able to join you, you need to port forward. But once you do that, anyone in the world can find your server in the server browser and join it and play with you. And you can create different game modes for people. You can set your own rules on your server. There's lots of stuff you can do.
And there's also like community scripts that you can download, right, from different people.
Oh yes, we have some very dedicated scripters who add lots of different little features that you can just put in your custom scripts folder, and they will just get loaded up, and you'll have them on your server.
Right. Well, that about covers it. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, David?
Maybe we can do another stream soon.
Absolutely. And Nomi, the rest of you, anything you want to say?
Yeah, it was very nice being on, and I'm also always up for more content like this. I was very bothered when with the last PR interview that I, in the end, couldn't make it, and I also apologize for that, as I wasn't really able to give a heads up either. But it's definitely nice being here, and thank you for inviting